Now, back in February, we launched the lockdown inquiry here on this show so that there would be a proper investigation after millions of ordinary people's lives were destroyed by the draconian government measures. And last week, on BBC Question Time, one intelligent audience member made the mistake of trying to provoke the same discussion on the mainstream media. He was despicably heckled in response. Look out in particular for the two haughty women in the row behind, cackling away to themselves.
I think what it shows that by Boris Johnson breaking the rules was that they were absurd in the first place and that we should never have gone into lockdown. And it was the biggest mistake, I think, that the government has made, because we now have a mental health crisis, we now have children who have to catch up on their lost learning, and we have NHS backlogs of over 6 million people, and we have cancer patients who can't get seen, who died during lockdown. No one talks about that. Why are we not talking about the collateral damage from 2 years of lockdowns which have destroyed the economy and which have caused the cost of living crisis that's happened today?
Now, I actually personally feel sorry for those women because they've been so brainwashed by the mainstream media that they're actually laughing at sound and reasoned arguments about the collateral damages of lockdown. It's been shows like Question Time which brought this man on, I suspect, knowing exactly the treatment he would get despite being the lone voice of COVID reason in the room, that have conditioned its audiences to treat debate and nuance with contempt, dismissed anti-lockdown voices as crackpots, pushed the government to adopt harder and longer COVID restrictions, only to move as soon as a juicier story emerged without a care as to the lingering effects of their scaremongering. Well, Neil Oliver, what do you make of it all?
I would say, first of all, that I thought that young chap on Question Time was incredibly brave. And whatever the circumstances were of him appearing in that audience, he was extremely strong-willed to come out and say what he said. And, you know, I would have given him a rousing round of applause had I been able to do so. And yes, as you said, the reaction from, well, the audience members that you could see, it was quite bizarre and very disheartening. But I think, yes, it was just a demonstration of the fact that I suppose once people become, as it were, complicit in something as big as the consequences of lockdown, it would be very, very difficult for many people to admit to themselves that they were duped. You know, they do say that it's easier to fool someone than to persuade someone that they have in fact been fooled. It's very difficult to move back, to row back. Once you've gone so far in accepting something, it's very difficult to row back on it. And I suppose it's understandable that people want to hang on to the belief that they were right to do what they did because they were told to do it, after all, by people and by media organisations that they had hitherto trusted. And you're right also that it seemed sometimes that some of the media was pushing for something much more draconian even than the government and the scientists at times, as though the tail was wagging the dog. I mean, we can all remember not so very long ago very familiar faces in the mainstream media, you know, demanding that people suck it up and insisting that it was just one Christmas and that if you couldn't go and visit your loved ones, too bad, it just had to be put up with, which was an even stronger line sometimes than was being pushed by the government itself. Because sections of the media seemed to pick up on the momentum and drive it even faster than it was going anyway. And we all know as well that there were nudge units in place, you know, the so-called behavioural insights units that were using psychologists. They were very well funded. They had limitless access to the media to push the mass of the population in the direction that was desired by some of the scientists, by government departments. That was the message coming out was so constant, so incessant and insistent that it took strong will to resist it. And so, yes, people have been successfully brainwashed, and I think we see that. The Professor Carol Sikora, they're talking about the continuation of what we describe as COVID theatre, continuing to wear the masks. You still see people driving their cars with masks on, walking in the countryside with masks on. The brainwashing is plain to see, and the media absolutely were more than complicit in driving it.
Well, indeed, Carol, and I think that's what was so shocking to me, to see those two women cackling in the way that they did. I do feel deep sympathy for them, because the fact that you would actually laugh at someone talking about the collateral damage of lockdown, when we literally see the collateral damage of lockdown spiking up in the news every single day. It's
Everyone's
extraordinary.
admitting it now. Everyone's admitting it now. There are reports coming in from the most trusted authorities saying that children have been severely impacted. There's development has been compromised, education has been compromised, mental, physical health, financial consequences of lockdown. Even I have spoken off the record to very senior government figures who have conceded that this will go down as one of the greatest public policy mistakes in a lifetime. I have had that said to me by very senior figures, and yet still out in the general population there's this determination to hold on to the idea that lockdown was right.
Indeed, Neil. Indeed. And it wasn't right, and we know that. But I think people should at least be able to question the narrative. And the fact that that isn't happening on shows like Question Time even now, it's astonishing to me.
I think what it's important to think about is the necessity for other channels, and I count GBNews in that. But in the world of new media, there's limitless potential really for other means by which information can go out there. What we need are new apps, new channels, new platforms, as many as possible, to create new arenas where people can come together and exchange points of view that are away from the mainstream. And the potential is there for open source, decentralised means of circulating content, probably perhaps using blockchain distributed ledger technology such as protects the cryptocurrencies from being interfered with, hacked, centralised. We have to take advantage of creating new means by which information can be shared, because if the legacy media and the traditional means of sharing information have been sort of colonised by a calcified, ossifying group that brooks no dissent, that they're just trotting out an orthodoxy, a one-track minded version of events, then it's beholden upon the rest of us to seek out other ways of speaking to one another and sharing ideas. And the technology is there to let that happen.
Fascinating stuff. Neil Oliver, thank you so much, Neil. We'll speak next week.
Thanks, Dan.